I think number one, it taught me that like you can be relatively intelligent and good at your job and still fail. And I think a lot of coaches, when they go 0 and 10, they just feel like they're a failure and they're never going to be any good. And you learn when you go through it. Like I made a lot of mistakes and I had to get better and I have gotten better. That being said, I was probably the same guy that 2 years ago was coach of the year. And now I'm 0 and 10. So it kind of gave me perspective of, okay, just because a coach isn't going 10 and 0 every year doesn't mean he doesn't know what he's.
What's going on, everybody? It's Coach Rob, and today I have a special guest, a guy that I really look up to. This guest has the blueprint from a spread guy who admits he couldn't run it to the architect of the gun tee. He's a head coach, a builder, an author of 40 plus resources for coaches, a guy who can sell out a clinic on a Friday and then install jet sweep for third graders on a Saturday. I'm talking about head coach Kenny Simpson. How you doing, sir?
Man, I'm good. That was probably a nicer introduction than I deserved. Thanks for having me.
No, I really appreciate it. So, could you go walk us through just your coaching journey? Because I was real interested on how you started off in coaching. I'm sure a position coach, and you worked your way up. I know you're offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, head coach. Can you just talk about your coaching journey?
Sure. I actually was a business major for a while. I attended Harding University. I really loved sports and realized I wanted to be a coach, and so switched to a coaching major. Graduated in 2003, so quite a bit ago. Then when you graduated that, I wasn't athletic enough to play college football, so you kind of take whatever job is offered. So moved my wife to Huntsville, Alabama, and got very, very lucky to work at Madison Academy. I think I started off as a seventh grade head coach and helped with the junior high, and then worked my way up to the defensive line coach and helping with special teams on the varsity in about 3 years there. Then we had an opportunity, as most coaches know, you kind of have to move up. So we moved to Montgomery, Alabama, became a defensive coordinator at 25, and then kind of had a job fall into my lap at 27. And Alabama's it's tough to be a head coach. It's really tough at 27 years old, and you learn a lot kind of as you go. And so was fortunate, have some pretty good athletes. We had a good little run there. Took them to the playoffs, first time they'd never made it at the level we were at. And then we had an opportunity, I think I was 31 at that point, to move to Arkansas. We had graduated from Harding University. South Side is near Batesville, which is about 45 minutes from where we went to college. So it was a really good opportunity to move back home, kind of, if we have a home, but moved back this direction, and then took over a job they had been 0 and 27, I think. I'd not had a lot of history of doing well, and thought at that point I was a young coach. I thought I knew everything and I could fix them. It would be easy. And I found out quickly I could not, and it took a while. So you kind of alluded to it in the introduction. We struggled early. I tried to run a lot of the same stuff I'd run in Montgomery. It was not going to work here just because of our types of athletes. And really about 2015, started putting together what we now call the gun tee. Started running it in 2016. We made the playoffs first time ever. 2017 we won the conference, and then we've had a little bit of a pretty decent run here the last few years. A lot of that, I think, is scheme. I think scheme does help, but more than scheme, I think a lot of it's just spending time and building the culture.
Yeah, definitely. What's something that early on in your career that you swore that you lived by, and then now that you've gone, years into coaching, you look back and say, "Man, I was really wrong in that regards," or that wasn't the complete best way to approach the situation?
Sure, that's a good question. Man, I think I used to equate how many hours I would put in the film study and on the field and away from my family. Is that was kind of, if I did more of that, God would reward me and we would win more. Like I just kind of thought that's how it was. That works in every other business. You put a lot of time in and you win. It doesn't work that way in sports. And so I had to learn a long time ago. Sometimes you can have an adverse effect by putting too much time in and really hurting yourself physically, your family physically, and even your team.
Yeah, definitely. What's that balance look like? Now, I think that's we talk about all the time. When I was in the military, it's always work life balance. It's like work life balance. You're working me like 50 days in a row. Like I'm 10, 12 hours a day. Work life balance is one of those things that we talk about, but people, it's hard for them to live it. And coaching is a similar thing, because you think the more I look in it, one more play, one more film that I need to study, because that maybe that has the answer to it. How has your work life balance really evolved over this time?
Well, we've got a couple rules, at our program. We try not to be on the field at maximum an hour 45, 2 hours at most, and we've tried to keep that. For us to do that, we've got to be very efficient planning. I try with my coaches to give them Saturdays off. So they have a day off. And then Sundays, I try my best to go from roughly 1 o'clock to about 7. So that's when we meet on the weekends, and we try to limit that as much as we can. We try to also make it a family friendly environment. After Friday night games, everyone's invited to my house, and my wife and all the wives kind of get together, food, and try to be together. And we try to do things during the off season that are fun for our staff and invite their families. Not just the coaches, but invite wives and kids, and have them come swim at the house or have them come do something they're going to enjoy. I think you have to make work not work. Like, you have to make your work, like where you are, a family environment. And I think it's difficult because in this environment, guys kind of move, they're in and out at times, and we're all in different stages of life. I've got some that have babies at home that just need to be at home. They don't need to come to that stuff, and that's fine. And then I've got some that they've got young kids, they want to have them involved. And so try to kind of balance that stuff out. But I think the main thing is understanding this is a job, and ultimately, your family is more important.
Right. Yeah. That's work life balance. And I look at your resources, and I'm very amazed and impressed by just how you've been able to put such quality information out there. YouTube videos. I mean, you Google your name or put in the search bar your name, so many different resources come up, and all that, and the books and the website, all of that is just on par with just the best within the game. How did you first start with, hey, I'm going to go this direction of not only building myself, but I think I have a passion for helping other coaches in this arena as well?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote my first book in 2018 or 2019, and that thing took me like 10 years to write. I was scared. I'm not an author. I mean, ironically, I am an author, but I'm
Right.
not naturally gifted in that. Like, there's a lot of people that helped me behind the scenes, to kind of get there. But then COVID hit. When COVID hit, I don't hunt, I don't fish, I don't do a lot of that stuff. I was bored out of my mind, and so it became kind of an opportunity to put some things together. We had a lot of free time on our hands at that point. And then when I put out, I think one of my first books, I can't remember which one it was, the response was overwhelming to me. It was kind of like, wow, this actually is helping people and they want more. So from there, it just kind of became a thing. I'll have, at any given time, I'll have 4 or 5 books kind of in the works that I'm going through. And whenever I have a free moment, usually that's what I do. I don't really do a whole lot of other fun, cool things. I hang out with my family, we travel, and then when I'm at home, I've just kind of stopped watching TV, and the time I was wasting doing that, putting into this. And like you mentioned, it's rewarding because, I get a lot of guys from across the country that'll email and say, hey, this helped me win. This helped our program. This helped this kid. And that to me it's really rewarding with kids. I'm always coach. I love kids. But now that I'm getting older, it's fun to give back to coaches who I know are going to impact other kids.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the material is truly outstanding. If I'd have told you like 10 years ago before you started this, did you think that this would be the direction that you take in regards to putting this content out there? I mean, like I said, the YouTube videos, they're all over the place. And you do an amazing job. I'm not just saying that because I'm talking to you, but you do an amazing job of presenting this information, almost like you're in the classroom. I feel like I'm at a clinic. I'm taking all the notes that I can, and I want to go back and rewatch it. Did you always have that skill set? And did you think that like this would be something that you would do, like the public speaking and the teaching in this regards?
I mean, I think a lot of coaches have that skill set and the ability to do it. No, that was not my goal at all. It just kind of evolved and happened. I've always, I mentioned I was a business major before, so speaking to people, understanding how things work. But I think any good coach, if they really wanted to do this, could. Just most of them, don't have that desire, and that's fine. And so I did learn from some great ones. I went to Tony Franklin's clinics. I thought he's one of the best teachers I've ever seen. Rick Stewart does a great job in that world, and so when I started kind of going down that path, I reached out to those guys. No Mazzoni's another one. Reached out to those guys and said, "Hey, y'all do a great job. What are you doing that I can do to help other coaches?" And what you learn when you kind of get in this world is most people, not everybody, most people, we all want to help each other. So there's no secrets. It's just how do we organize it and put it together and present it, like you mentioned, so that it's clear. So I was blessed that those guys helped me. So now when I get asked by other people, I try to help them.
Yeah, definitely. What I know you get a lot of coaches into your inbox. I mean, sure you have all different ways to reach you. What's some of the most meaningful feedback that you've received from a coach that made you sit back and just like, wow, this is pretty cool.
And we're very blessed that a lot of them do. I didn't realize football was played globally. I mean, we kind of know that it is, but I'll get hit up by dudes in Australia or Japan or one guy in Africa. I didn't even know they had football there, but he found me on YouTube, and so that's been pretty cool. My wife and I were walking. We try to go AFCA every year because a lot of coaches there I kind of work with. We were walking, and one guy came up and said, "Hey, we won the conference championship," and he showed us whatever clip it was, and so that was the first time I think she kind of saw this is actually helping other people. But for me, a lot of it is winning games is cool, and I do like to hear that. I love to hear that, hey, this is working. It's not snake
Right.
oil; it actually does work. Probably the more inspiring ones is when they talk about, hey, we turned our program around. I turned my career around. It helped my family. That stuff is stuff that you kind of go, okay, it's worth doing all this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And you talked before on in different podcasts about starting off. You outstanding, had a lot of success up front, and then you went through the 0-10 season. And for me, I think for everybody, you learn so much about yourself, your process, and your beliefs in general. Because when you hit life's adversity, not just coaching, but life in general, things reveal a lot to you, and you learn so much about it. And sometimes that's the best time that you'll have. I think back to my time sometime in the military, and the best times we remember are the tasks that were some of the worst tasks. Hey, go clean that latrine, the toilet overflowed, and you're there. It's just part of the day, right? So, what did that 0-10 season teach you, as a man? What did that reveal about yourself, and how did you grow from that into who you are?
I think a couple things. I think number one, it taught me that like you can be relatively intelligent and good at your job and still fail. And I think a lot of coaches, when they go 0-10, they just feel like they're a failure and they're never going to be any good. And you learn when you go through it. Like I made a lot of mistakes, and I had to get better, and I have gotten better. That being said, I was probably the same guy that 2 years ago was coach of the year. Now I'm
Right.
0-10, so it kind of gave me perspective of okay, just because a coach isn't going 10-0 every year doesn't mean he doesn't know, what he's doing. And it gave me kind of an empathy, now for guys that are going through it. Instead of looking at a guy, that program's 0-10, they're terrible, and thinking he's terrible, it gave me an empathy to kind of see, no, I've been there and I know what that feels like. And now can I maybe help you through it? I think the second thing it taught me was I could handle a lot more than I thought I could. I lost about 20 pounds that season. I don't deal with losing well. Like I don't deal with losing well. I was probably not a great person to be around to a lot of people.
Right.
But the last game of the season, we're 0-9. We're playing like 19, 18, 19 sophomores. Take the conference champs to the fourth quarter down 7. And it taught me that my kids are resilient. Like, I think if you continue to push and push and push, your kids will be resilient to the end. I think it taught me that I'm never going to give up on this. And I think that's what you want to see in those seasons. I've got a guy on my staff right now that was part of that 0-10 year. So a lot of those kids I've stayed in touch with, and they've gone on to do great things and weren't really talented at football, but really good people. So I think that's the deal. And I think that makes it work with several coaches that I work with is I'm not just coming at you as a guy with 5 blue chip kids who've never lost. We're winning with roughly the same type of athletes that we went 2-8 or 0-10 or whatever with, because we're starting to figure out excuses are done. Here's what we have to do to move forward.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, that's some of the best success. I think I listened to a podcast where it said you had 60 kids on that team that were there from start to finish, and you already described the 0-9 playing a 9-0 team and just the resilience that you build within those kids. And for me, you look back on some of those seasons, and someone might say, "Hey, that wasn't successful numbers wise, record wise," but you think that's probably some of the best coaching I've ever done because a lot of times you go into a 10-0 season, you're good, right? You got a generational guy that only comes around a city once in a while, and you have one of those kids. a lot of times the best job that you do, you look back and say, man, we got some wins here, or we really pushed these kids. So that's a tremendous job and tremendous life lessons within that. So, I know you gained a lot from that for sure. Um, if you had to describe your coaching philosophy, how would you describe it?
Man, it's a good one, real good one. I think what we try to do is kind of look at the question this way with our program: is this best for our kids? Like, it doesn't have to be what they're going to like, but is this best for our kids? Then we're going to do that. And I think that's a lot of coaches. What's best for me? What's best for my staff? What's best for our admin? What's best for our fans? No offense to any of them, that you're going to take a back seat to what's best for our kids. If it's best for our kids to do X, Y, or Z, maybe I got to learn something that I'm uncomfortable learning. If that's what's best for our kids, we're going to do it. If it's best for our kids to only go an hour 15, like we're going to go today, and I'm still uncomfortable with that as a coach. Going an hour
Right.
15-minute practice on a Wednesday? Are you freaking kidding me? If that's what's
Right.
best for our kids, we're going to figure out how to make that work. So we kind of work that way as a staff: is what's best for our kids, and then we work backwards from that. I think the big thing for me when you get to coaching philosophies, the other part of that is be yourself. Like, I'm probably some nerdy old man guy right now, and that's who I am. And I'm not going to change that for whatever it is, as long as we're serving our kids. I think a lot of coaches, it's okay to emulate guys that were successful, but be who you are, because that's the best version of you.
Yeah, definitely. I I love the innovation of football and how things evolve in regards to teaching the game and retention. I mean, you've been really at the forefront with a lot of this with the YouTube videos and the books and that nature. In 2025, what makes a coach great? Not necessarily good, but what makes them great, especially when you're dealing with the generation of kids, how they're so technologically advanced. They don't necessarily like sitting in lectures like we used to do for hours at a time. So what makes a kid, or excuse me, what makes a coach great, and how do you really adapt with this generation?
Yeah, like you mentioned, it's changed. I mean, just in my career, it's changed quite a bit, and I think it's going to continue to change. And unfortunately, I don't always think that's the right direction. So, in my opinion, what makes a coach great is if you can get a bunch of individual kids to somehow function as a unit, to get them to be unselfish. I think that's the number one goal. And I think football, we do have a slight advantage. I couldn't imagine being a basketball coach in today's era, but football wise, finding a way to get kids to give up their own selfish desires to function as a unit. In my opinion, that's probably the hardest thing you can do now, because of the way the generation's kind of wired with social media and YouTube and parents. And there's a lot of things in there that you have to kind of maneuver and work with. And you got to figure out a way to get those kids to play for each other. I think that's probably my number one thing I'm looking at.
Yeah, definitely. Can you talk about a moment, not necessarily a win, where a kid reminded you exactly this is why you coach? You know what I mean? Like a kid, like, hey, this is it.
Yeah. Back in 2009, I was just an assistant. Maybe it was 2007. Somewhere in that time period, we were not very good. I was even coordinator on our team. We were maybe 2-6. That were not very good. We had a kid on our team named Jordan Creel. He's now a doctor. He was a great kid, good athlete for us, sophomore, I think. His mom, I think it was his mother, gets killed in a house fire on Wednesday. And so horrible, horrible situation. I mean, I can't imagine that. So we don't see him Wednesday, we don't see him Thursday. We're getting on the bus to go to the game Friday, and he gets on the bus, and it is dead silent. I mean, not a word. We drive 2 hours to go play some team that was, I think they were 6-2, should have beat the crap out of us. That kid ran for 300 yards that night. And not only did he play out of his mind, our team played out of their mind. And to me, it was like, oh my, I get choked up even now, kind of remembering that. But it kind of, the lesson it left to me was X's and O's are nice, but getting your team to function as a group for a higher purpose, you're unbeatable when you do that.
That's one reason that I love the game of football, just the beauty of it, the scheme of it, the relationship of it. It's something almost that it's so hard to duplicate. Just that mentality, just that camaraderie. I mean, I was in the military; it's very similar to that as well. But there's something special about Friday nights, high school football. the preparation, the dreams that you have, the coach's dreams, the kids' dreams, the parents' dreams. I mean, they're all laying it out on the field. I mean, you just feel it when you go out there. Just the pageantry of the game. It's just amazing. It really is. So I love that portion about it. So let's get into the gun tee itself. And so I'm always interested because I love schematics in regards to football. Why I know you were a spread guy before, and you I think I heard where you said you didn't have any wing tee experience up to that point. So why'd you go the direction of the kind of the spread with the wing tee? Why did you not pick maybe marry some other two? What was it about those systems that you combined to make the what you have now?
Well, when I was a defensive coordinator, our head coach ran the under center wing tee. And I thought it was the most boring thing on the planet, but it was hard to get lined up to and it was hard to stop. So it was one of those deals where I thought it was boring, but it was hard to stop. And that always kind of stuck with me. Then I got into the spread world and really loved the RPO game. And went, man, if you could ever figure out how to put this stuff together, it could be good. And then we go 0-10. And back in 2014, 2015, kind of that time frame, Arkansas was just taken over by 10 personnel, 10 and 20. Still kind of is. You watch football today, especially the high school level, a lot of 10 and 20 personnel. Nobody was using tight end wing. Nobody was. Starting to become a thing now, and I would like to get a little bit of that credit, but probably
Yeah,
more of it goes to the NFL guys that are doing that. But then people started realizing it's hard to line up to tight ends. It's hard to line up to tight end plus a wing. You got a four-man surface over there. If I can keep the spread elements in this, it's really, really difficult to stop. This year, if we don't have a penalty on a drive, we're scoring at 90%. I don't know how great we are. We've managed to stop ourselves plenty. But when we don't
right.
stop ourselves without a penalty, it's tough to stop because there's so many things going on there. Can you get lined up? Can you fit it right? Oh, wait a minute. There's RPOs and backside stuff coming here. And we got a very good quarterback this year that really helps us quite a bit in that world. But it allowed us to use good athletes. But generally, when we're playing at the levels we want to play at, which is state level, competing at the highest level, they're going to have superior speed. They're going to have guys that are able to lock down our guys, and they're going to have guys that are bigger than our guys. So in my mind, the wing tee gives you the ability to run the ball against a bigger defense with misdirection, angle blocking, that kind of stuff. The RPO play action stuff allows your receivers to succeed if they're getting covered by maybe a quicker, faster DB. So that's why we went that direction. And man, in 2016, we made the playoffs first time, and then it kind of worked from there. And we've continued to evolve it. The offense can't be stagnant. We're running different stuff now than we were running when we first started doing. That's why you mentioned 40 books. Well, a lot of those are just updates of here's how we're continuing to kind of evolve because you got to stay ahead of the game because the game is always moving. We have the same base stuff, but we're always going to continue to add this wrinkle or add that wrinkle or add that formation to keep us kind of ahead of the curve.
Yeah, definitely. Last year I took over at a school, and they ran the wing tee traditionally, right? And the offensive coordinator ended up going over there, and the wing tee is coming into. I didn't know a lot about it, but it is very hard to stop teams. I mean, you could call counter and things like plays like that, and teams you could run it four times in a row, and you're going to get positive yards if you can stay above the in front of the sticks and all that. Like you will have an 8-9 minute drives, and the offense if they go three and out, you're back on the field, and you put another 8-9 minute drive on it. It's just amazing how well that offense is. And we would
Yeah, a
have
couple
plays
of years
where
ago, we played a number one team 5A, which we were out of our depth, and we
right,
beat them. I think we beat them 20, I can't remember, 17-14. I don't know, some low scoring game. They had the ball like six times the whole game, and we were in the gun, but we
right.
knew our game was clock, 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 clock. We've had multiple drives this year or this season where you look at, well, coach, you only scored 35 or 42. Well, we had the ball six times, and we're scoring at a good, efficient rate, and we're frustrating our opponent. So I do believe exactly what you said there with the wing tee is there's something to be said for milking that clock.
Yeah, it is, and just the genius behind doing running that from gun. It seems like man, it's so why didn't people think of that beforehand, right? It's one of those things that football, I love how innovative it is. And you talk about a lot of people running 10 personnel. So the way to counter that is obviously they're practicing and playing against 10 personnel teams. You go heavy, old school football, single wing, things like that. Like they're out of their elements now. It's not what they're used to practicing against. So not a lot of people want to hit in the A gaps and get trapped and all that. I mean, it's not fun on a Friday night when the other team's just running it down your throat. So that's what I love about the wing tee for sure. Is there so in regards to building the system? So when we last year we ran the wing tee, we had spread concepts to it, but we would almost now we're going into the gun. So I think that's genius behind it. Was that kind of your mindset in regards to not going traditional wing tee and then putting them in the gun, so then everything kind of looks the same instead of shifting out of that formation?
Yeah, it was. I think the shotgun is just here to stay. Kids grow up throwing and catching the ball, and it modernizes a really good offense. Wing T is a good offense, but it modernizes it because now formationally I can get you spread out. I almost make you play like the two halves of the field. You got to play the tight end wing one way, and you got to play the receivers another way. And then now I can get into trips. Boom, I can get into empty. And we're going to run a lot of stuff that is really, really hard to line up to, but we're going to run the base wing T type plays. And then we're going to have some counters, like you mentioned, counters, motions, misdirection, RPOs. Off of that, that's so much easier doing the gun. One thing we try to keep as a non-negotiable, we don't mess with our wings alignment. He's the same all the time, so you can't get a tendency. We don't mess with our running backs alignment. He's the same all the time, so you can't get a tendency. Because I know when I was a defensive coordinator, you're looking for what's giving it away.
Yeah, definitely for sure. So it's a copycat league, right? It's a copycat business. There's so much information out there, so many different systems. Can you just speak on maybe why do a lot of coaches will grab a lot of material or systems or concepts that don't necessarily match their kids?
It's probably comfortable. We mentioned earlier, we put what's best for our kids up front and then we work backwards. Well, this was what was best for our friend. And maybe it's not best for your kids. If we don't try to, I'm not selling things that aren't going to work for you. Like that's not how that
Right.
works. If it's going to help you, we do it. But if it's not, we don't. I think a lot of coaches just coach what they know or coach what they see on TV or coach what they see, bigger schools running and they don't know how to adjust to what they have. If we had to run double wing under center, I would want to gouge my eyes out. But if it helped us win a game, that's what I would do. Like that's kind of my mindset. And so I think a lot of coaches are sometimes more concerned with thinking this is going to help them win, but not really looking at does this match what's walking through my hallways. And you got to be realistic with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I saw on your website that you have the ability where you come out to a school and you help them install the gun tee. What does that look like from your perspective? Do you bring a bunch of coaches with you? Like, can you just walk me through that process? I was very interested in seeing like what if we called you out to our school, we say, hey, we want to run this. I think it's a week long you're out. So what does that within that week, what does that look like?
Yeah, we've been blessed to do that a few times now. So we have several different options. So some guys they'll bring me out and I'll work with their coaches. And some guys they'll bring me out, I'll work with their team. Most people choose to bring my offensive line coach as well. I think we did 4 this year, which is really cool because we got to go to several really neat places. Luckily, all 4 of them did have a good turnaround. So it's so far we're knock on wood. We're about 100% on guys getting better. So that's good. We went to Pennsylvania. They wanted offense and defense. So we actually brought the defensive coordinator. I brought my son, who was a senior on the team. And so all 4 of us went out there. And we basically would do usually about 2 or 3 practices a day. Then we do film work with the kids, film work with the coaches. And usually in about 2 to 3 days, we get the basics of everything installed for them. They record everything. We meet with the kids. We continue to work with them throughout the year. I think this past year we worked at a school in Illinois, Marshall, Illinois, had been 0-10 and made the playoffs. So we're excited about that. Pennsylvania, another school had been 0-10 and they went 4-6 this year. So kind of seeing that stuff was really, really neat. It's cool to connect with those coaches. Of course, we also provide them all the resources. So they get all the books, they get all the video content they can go back to, and then they've got our cell numbers. So a lot of times we're staying in touch with them during the season if they've got questions. It's been a really rewarding thing. That's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing for the coaches to bring you out there and just hear from yourself, get that install. I mean, it's just if coaches can do it, definitely take advantage of it because I think the system is great. You have so many resources there that it's like once you leave, then it's like now you have everything that you need. You have all the books and they record it, and it's just awesome that you do that. So let's talk about the kids in general. So what do you think is the biggest difference coaching today's kids than probably when you first started, maybe 15 or 20 years ago? Kind of how that process is.
Well, I'd say, kids really have not changed. The atmosphere around them, has
Right.
changed where I think that inherently a lot of times they're kids because of whatever they're around are more in it for what can this do for me, and I think a lot of times kids haven't learned to be pushed through hard times. Not all kids, but a lot of kids just, they've not, when things get tough, they're allowed to quit or their parent steps in or there's just a that's what I think we're called to do as coaches is teach kids how to persevere when times are difficult. And then we also have to be understanding as a coach. These kids are coming from different backgrounds. We got to understand what this kid's going through. How can we help them progress? It's not going to be an overnight. You're not going to get a kid who's soft and he's going to quit. And then in one day, now he's a tough grown man. It doesn't work that way. You got to meet them where they are and help them slowly progress so that hopefully when they leave your program, they're ready to take on way more important things like bills and jobs and whatever is around the corner, which, if you live life long enough, you know that it's tough. So I think that's kind of where we've got to go. And I'm really concerned, about this generation of young ones. Like I'll be concerned about the next generation of young ones. I don't think it's all their fault, but I think a lot of times we're quick to write some IEP or whatever it is in school to excuse poor behavior, or we're quick as a parent to step in and I don't think my kid's being treated fairly, or we're quick as a kid to this sucks, I'm going to quit. We got to figure out a way as coaches to meet them where they are, help them walk through it together, but we got to get them to the point where when they leave, they're prepared for what's coming, and what's coming's way harder than football.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's one of our calls as coaches, and really just people in adults in today's society is preparing that next generation. That's what I love about football because I grew up without my father in my life, and but when I would go to practice or with any type of athletics, that was the time I really got to interact and be part of a team. It meant so much, and it helped my success throughout my life, whether it's the military, working government contractor, coaching, all that stuff set me up for success. So as a coach, I think we do have a duty of our own to make sure we're building that next generation. So I think you said before that you've had, teams without Division I, athletes type caliber players, but those kids one's a doctor, they do so much within life that those lessons they learn from us as coaches is, it's awesome. So, and one thing we did in the military as well is we would read feedback to all the drill sergeants, and it'd say, "Oh, this generation, they're lazy, they're this, they're that," and then we'd say, "Hey, this is when you went through basic training. This is what your instructor said about you. This isn't about what your peers are saying about the current generation. It's the same thing that you're saying about them is the same thing that was said about you." So putting that into perspective, I think is awesome. So the next question I have is, how do you get kids to fall in love with the hard part of football, the discipline, the discomfort, the sacrifice, especially really in a comfort seeking, world we live in now?
I think it's a couple things. One, you've got to make sure that they care about the team and they know you care about them. I mean, I think that's probably every coach would say that, but are you really living that out? I mean, are you going to watch these kids when they're doing things that aren't with football? Are you involved with them when they're off the field? Are you involved with them, when they graduate and are you still there for them? So I think you got to kind of establish that culture if that's who you are. I think the second thing is ultimately you got to win. I mean, that's hard to say, but it's the truth. Kids, what are you offering? Do you know what you're doing? Have you done all you can do to ensure that we have a chance to be successful? Kids will work their tail off if they know you are giving them an opportunity to be successful and part of something that's great. Kids will work their tail off if they know you're willing to help them, and so I think that you got to know what you're doing. A lot of coaches are really good people, but they're not very good coaches. And at some point, you're called to be the best you can be at your job. So just because you're a good person doesn't mean you need to be a football coach. Now, I'll say this: if you're a horrible person, don't be a football coach. But just because I didn't understand that early. I thought if I worked hard and I went to church and I did right things, I should win. Like that's how the Bible says things should go. At least that's how I read it. And then I started realizing, no, not at all. Those don't equate. I should work hard. I should do all those things because that's right to do. But I got to get better at my job if I want to win football games.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, that's the bottom line. If you're not winning games, and you're not going to be there long. That's a great point that you put. So let's talk about. You said before about standards over wins. What does that look like over like on a random Tuesday? If I walked out to practice, what would that specifically look like?
Man, I don't know. We do talk about standard, and that's something in our program we're having to learn. We went from not very good, we've kind of talked about it here, to pretty good, and then we got to now we're pretty good. But we're not exactly where I want to go, and we're probably never going to be where I want to go. So we're dealing with that now. We had to talk to our kids the other day. I think this group of seniors I've got is 31-4. So they're 31-4. We've won a lot of games, and I think 28 of those wins we win, and they're almost numb. Like they're almost like, we won, that's cool. What can we do to be better next week? And so we've had to kind of sit them down and say, hey guys, we got to celebrate a little bit. Like I know you don't remember, but it is hard to win. So we try to enjoy the moment along the way. But I think we've done a pretty good job here of getting our kids to understand that we're always looking for, what can I do better? What can I do better this time? And so when we get out there on Tuesday, that's kind of what we're looking for. Is we're going to be very limited on how much time we're out there. If we're doing a drill, there's a purpose of a drill. Have fun when you're taking your breaks. When it's time to focus, I hope that we're focusing on those little details. We're not perfect at it. We've still got a long way to go, but I think we've gotten better at that.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about drills for a little bit. Do you have a drill bank that you present to your staff and say, hey, these are kind of the drills we're going to run in regards to installing, or on a pre-practice, or in your individual session? Do you have a session? I'm sure you have a set of drills, or do your position coaches maybe have the ability to freestyle a little bit on certain things? How do you allow them to teach their position?
A little bit of both. We do have kind of a bank of, these are the drills we want to run for tackling, for open field tackling, for leverage, for whatever. These are our drills for our D line. These are our, drills for our O line. Here's how we're going to set up our practice. But yesterday, I looked down there and our defensive coaches are running some drill they'd come up with on Sunday, and I was like, what in the world? Well, we were having a hard time with our inside backers. They're both kind of new to the position. They're getting lost in all this stuff. So they'd set up a drill. They had like 3 kids running with dummies and making them focus on their key to get. So it's the same drill we've been running, fit off your key. But now we've kind of added this element of craziness going on in front of you to help you stay out of that and to fit correctly. So a little bit of both. We have drills that these are what we're going to run. These are what our everyday type drills. Every week we're going to hit these drills. But if it's a drill that you can show me, we need this because we're struggling with this little added element will help us, I'm never going to tell a coach no. Now, I don't want to see them running a drill that doesn't equate to what we're doing, but if they're doing good drills, or drills that I can see how this is going to show up on a game, I'm going to give them the freedom. Now, a lot of these coaches have been with me now for 8, 9, 10 years. So they've earned the right to do that,
So I would think, and I always wondered about this, if I was to be hired as a position coach or a coordinator on your staff, because you have wealth of knowledge, you've done almost every position, coordinate on both sides. I'm sure you've taught every position on the field at one point or another. How do you go about growing your staff itself? Because you have so much resources. Is there a plan that you have with them? Do you sit down with them about their goals? Like, how do you go about just growing that position coach, that coordinator, really the future of this game?
Yeah, and I don't know if we just do a ton of formal meetings, but it's a whole lot of, I want to know what your goals are. Where do you want to be, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever it is. And then if you're wanting to move up the ladder, which a lot of guys are, then we're going to have more conversations, where not just football, Football, of course, we'll talk about that. And we do give our kids, our kids, I call them kids, our younger coaches, they've got drill books and things that we'll meet with them. We don't want to just throw them out there without knowing what's going on. But we also will talk about like other parts of the program, fundraising, discipline, uh, you know, equipment check, inventory, all that stuff is part of the program. And each coach kind of has another area that they run as well as their position. We do a word of the week with our kids. So we always get in front of the kids and talk, and every coach gets that opportunity. And that means they get to talk to them Friday night right before we go out and play a game. Like that's their chance to speak to our team. So we try to provide opportunities there for growth. And then if I know, hey, this coach wants to become a head coach or wants to become whatever, then they get to kind of get behind the curtain a little bit where, hey, come back here with me and you're going to come meet with this parent with me because this is not a fun meeting. And I got to have somebody in there anyway. Probably good for you to kind of see how this goes. You're going to go with me. We're going to talk to our admin about our budget. You're going to go in and do this. And so kind of let them behind the curtain so they can see when their moment comes to be the head coach, what's coming.
So, what's a non-negotiable value that you'll never compromise, even if it costs you wins, fans? What's one of those non-negotiables you're like, yeah, we're not going to do that regardless of what we could get from it?
I would imagine there's several things there, that they will integrity, but probably again, what's best for our kids? Like what's best for our kids? We try to always keep that question first and foremost. And what's best for our kids is not going to go over well in the community. I've had times where I've been questioned, and you will be in this world. There's times with coaches where I don't know if there is a right decision, but you have to make the decision you feel is best with, do I kick this kid off? What's his punishment look like? How do I deal with, whatever's going on there? And I can promise you, whatever side of the fence you land on, the other side thinks you're an idiot. So try to make the decision you think is best, for the kid and for all of your kids. That's probably the hard part of coaching in my mind. There's some obvious ones, don't cheat. We're not going to holler at a kid or berate a kid. We're going to hug on our kids and make sure they know we care for them because we do sometimes get on them, and those things I think are obvious non-negotiables, but I think the biggest ones are try to make the decision that's best for the kid and the kids above what you think public perception will be and block that noise out.
Yeah, definitely. And this is one I wanted to ask you for sure was how do you handle, because you're a guy, people know you nationally, you talked about even worldwide, they're reaching out, talking about your programs and your material that you have. How do you handle the weight of being a person that I'm sure everyone, when they go to you, they want, you're Yoda, right? They want an answer and they expect you to have that answer, but you're human like everyone else. You've gone through a lot, but that is a pressure in being the guy that everyone can go and rely on for those final answers.
Tough balance. I mean, it really is. I think our local coaches here probably don't like me very much. There's a chance to beat somebody who I think people might think that I feel like I know everything. I don't. I don't. I know mistakes that I've made and things that have worked for me, and that's how I try to phrase things when I visit with coaches. Here's what I've done that hasn't worked in the past. Here's what I've done that has worked. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I mean, I'm not in your shoes. I don't know what you're going through. But I think at times that people maybe construe that as I feel like I know more than anyone else. I don't. I'm just older and I've been through a little bit. And if we can pass that along to the next people, that's what we want to do. And I want to try to be real careful so coaches know that. Like, these are things that have worked for us. And these are things that haven't worked for us. You still have to make the decision you feel is best for you. And I think that at times, I've had to just tell a coach, man, I don't know. I don't know. That's a tough situation. I'll pray for you, but that's about all I can do here.
Yeah, definitely. So as we get ready to close this, I have a couple, I would say, not rapid fire and quotation marks, take it for what it's worth, answer how long you want to, but just a couple random questions kind of to ask you based off what we've really discussed and some other things as well. But the first question I have is that what did the 0-10 season teach you that winning never could?
Relationships matter, and mainly relationship with my family and my wife, because they're probably the only ones that are going to be there for me. I knew when you look at getting fired, which when you're 0-10, that's what you assume is going to happen. You start to realize they're what matters more than anything else.
Yeah, definitely. And I say this one next one with the air quotes because But what hill are you willing to die on in football?
Whew. I think that we practice them too much and we work our coaches too long of hours.
Yes, that's a good one for sure. Now this one's for youth sports, as kids are coming up. What's one thing in youth sports you would eliminate tomorrow if you could just had a magic button or a wand to say, "Hey, this is gone because this is not working."
Take the scoreboard off and the trophies away.
Yeah, definitely. What makes a kid unforgettable to a coach?
Whew, the kids, there's a lot of them. Every year you kind of have a kid or seveble kids that, man, they're
Several, right?
special to you. Yeah, I think the kids that are just, man, they love life, that they're authentic and they live life to the fullest. And, they all come in different shapes and sizes, and some of them get in a lot more trouble than others. But I think it's the ones that are authentic. They're not trying to be something they're not.
Yeah, I love that for sure. What's the truth about coaching that would shock most parents?
There are times that you made a wrong decision, but for the most part, you have their kids' best interests in mind, sometimes more than they do.
Yeah, definitely. That's always a run the ball or do this. It's like, man, I love sometimes you can block it out, but then sometimes you just hear that person just saying the same. It's like, gosh, this person is on me today. Like,
Let me give you a quick story, and I tell this in my clinics. So we're 13-0 last year. First time we'd ever been 13-0 or 12-0. I don't know. Somewhere we're playing in a game we've never played in before. We're at home. We're winning. We're up
right.
like 24-7 in the fourth. And I'm running the ball, not even trying to get first downs, just let that clock run away and let's go to the semifinals.
Right.
And I'm getting blistered by some lady who probably works at McDonald's, telling me to throw the ball. And I'm just going, they're idiots even when you're winning.
Yeah, they're gonna be on you regardless. That's the funny part about it. What separates a great high school program from a good one?
I think continued excellence. I think continuing to work forward. Good programs are good when they have good athletes. Great programs are good every year.
Yeah, definitely. Complete this sentence. If you want to be a head coach, be ready to blank.
Be ready to be very lonely. At the top, it's very lonely.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. And last one I have before we close it up. Give one piece of advice to a burned out coach who is listening right now.
I've been there, and it does get better. Keep working.
Yeah, definitely. Coach, I can't thank you enough for, again, like I said before, you're a guy that I've admired for a very long time. Just go to your resource. I always go to your resources, listen to your videos. It feels like I've talked to you forever because I've been driving in the car, listening to your stuff and whatever. So you're a guy I have the utmost respect for, and it's not just something that I'm saying like just because you're here. You're a guy that I respect, and you've done it the right way. And I just love your material. You're a guy that other coaches should emulate and really build upon as they start to take their journey into how do we highlight these coaches, how do we advance the game, how do we advance the kids, and ultimately keep football the greatest sport how it is. So, Coach, I want to thank you, personally, say thank you for your time, and I'll leave the last word to you. Anything you want to say to the people that are listening or whatever.
Man, I just want to say I appreciate you. We need more guys like you that are also going to try to highlight good things in the sport and grow the game. And I think we're the great part of your generation. A lot of you young coaches kind of get hammered on by the old coaches, but the great part about your generation is I think you recognize it's a collaborative effort. We're all here to help each other. Unfortunately, my generation, it was all about kind of keeping secrets and that kind of stuff. And so appreciate what you're doing. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks, Coach. I appreciate it.